So it's about 36 hours after Mayweather versus Pacquiao now. I've got a post-fight analysis video on my channel. Please check it out. But right now I want to look forward. And I want to look forward specific to Floyd Mayweather. Who is he going to fight next? Who would I like him to fight next? As I see it, at this stage, there are 5 potential candidates. I'm going to run through each of the 5, and then I'm going to tell you which ones I think are the most likely, and then I'm going to tell you which one I'd most like to see. Let's go up in weight, as in, let's start with the lightest guy and end up with the heaviest guy. I'm going to start with Danny Garcia. You know, if Floyd is genuinely going to retire after his next fight, and that's something that I'm not 100% sure I believe. I think he'll want to go for 50-0. But if he is genuinely going to retire, or even if he isn't and he's just looking at building a legacy towards the end of his career, then beating a guy who is unbeaten and potentially representative of the future of the sport is a good move. You know, Danny Garcia, a lot of people give him a lot of stick, including me. And the truth is, he didn't look very good whatsoever in his last fight. But let's be honest, this guy's got an impressive resume. He's beaten Amir Khan. He's beaten Lucas Matisse. He's beaten a few old-timers towards the end of their careers, and he's got some big names on his resume. Yeah, obviously he got the win against Lamont Peterson last time out. This guy has been in with serious opposition, and he's unbeaten. He's won every time he's stepped into the ring. For Floyd Mayweather to take him out, you know, to beat him up, that's a statement. You know, in terms of when you analyse someone's legacy, you could say Floyd Mayweather beat Danny Garcia, who beat Lucas Matisse, who beat Lamont Peterson, who knocked out Amir Khan. It's another sort of good name on Floyd's record, a guy who's been champion and undefeated for a very, very long time. I also think, you know, Floyd Sr. was saying Floyd should take an easy fight for his last, his last matchup. And I think out of the 5 guys we're mentioning today, Danny Garcia is the easiest of the 5, and I think Mayweather beats him easy stylistically. If you look at the problems Lamont Peterson gave Danny Garcia, and I scored that fight to Garcia, but it was a tight fight, and Lamont Peterson caused Garcia all sorts of problems. But if you imagine that being Mayweather, not Lamont Peterson, you know, how much more advanced Mayweather is than Lamont, you know, it's hard to see Danny Garcia dealing with the issues Mayweather causes. So Danny Garcia is the first one. Amir Khan, number 2. A guy who has been calling out the Floyd Mayweather fight for many, many years. A guy who arguably has a weak jaw. A guy who's come up from 140 pounds and, if we're honest, is yet to fight a top 5 welterweight. But a guy who brings a huge fan base. A guy who has support from the UK, Asia, the Middle East. You know, a guy who really is a global player in the sport of boxing. You know, Amir Khan brings more interest from Asia, the Middle East, than any other fighter out there as far as I'm concerned. And it would be another big payday from Floyd Mayweather. Perhaps Floyd could look at that fight and think, it's a guy who's been getting stopped at 140. It's a guy who's made his way up from 135 and 140. Potentially, I'd be able to get the stoppage. I'd be able to exploit defensive issues. I think Amir Khan, you know, certainly you could look at him and think it's a winnable fight. For what it's worth, I actually think it's probably the hardest fight out there for Floyd, which is something I'll come on to later on in this video. But Amir's got that big upside. The UK fans, you know, we saw how much money they brought over when Ricky Hatton came. You know, the interest from overseas, pay-per-view in Asia, pay-per-view in the Middle East. You know, it's relevant. Option number 3, Kell Brook. Now, Floyd Mayweather has 2. Well, I know he's planning to vacate, which is something I'll come on to later on. But Floyd Mayweather has just beaten Manny Pacquiao, who is one of the other champions at 147. If he's serious about retiring, perhaps best to beat Kell Brook, leaving himself the only champion at 147, and retiring as a sort of dominant force in the division, you know, literally beating every single champion there is in his weight class. That would be an impressive feat. I think the difficulty with Kell Brook is, at present, he doesn't have the name of the other guys we've mentioned. You know, I don't think people in America, people globally, know about Kell Brook as much as they know about Amir Khan, as much as they know about Danny Garcia. Put simply, whilst Kell Brook is arguably up there in terms of the talent stakes, he hasn't fought the level of opposition. The Sean Porter win was fantastic, but that's about it, isn't it? I mean, below Sean Porter, who's the best opposition? Jojo Dan, Senchenko, Carson Jones. These aren't global stars. They're really not. So for me, the value in beating Kell Brook is in destroying every champion in the division, rather than Kell Brook himself. But obviously, unlike Amir Khan, Kell Brook does bring that unbeaten record into the ring. And I think that's another relevant thing. I think Mayweather likes fighting undefeated guys. So, you know, potentially another name to throw into the hat. Number 4, Keith Thurman. One of the most exciting fighters out there at £147. A big name in the States. Perhaps, like Kell Brook, he's not known globally on the same footing as Danny Garcia or an Amir Khan, but a guy we're becoming increasingly aware of. Issues with Keith Thurman? He doesn't bring a belt to the table. His resume is, you know, acceptable, but beating guys like Leonard Bundu, Robert the Ghost Guerrero, Diego Chavez, Diaz, you know, like, they're good names. They're just not top 5 names. They're not names that historically will be as impressive when someone's reviewing a resume. I don't necessarily think, let's say this, pound for pound, I think Keith Thurman's resume is a lot worse than Danny Garcia's in terms of wins and losses. Having said that, Thurman is a very charismatic, saleable guy, a good talker, an extremely visually, aesthetically pleasing fighter. He's undefeated. He's the next big hope. Perhaps Keith Thurman could be number 4. You know, could be the last fight. Could he be Mayweather's 49th appearance? And number 5, Miguel Cotto, the rematch. Cotto, now middleweight champion, set to defend against Daniel Gill. Now, obviously, this fight goes out the window if Cotto loses to Daniel Gill. And for what it's worth, I think that is a reasonable possibility. I think Gill is underrated. And I'm not entirely convinced about Cotto as a middleweight. I mean, who has he actually beaten at middleweight? Sergio Martinez was a shell of himself. You know, it's hard to really predict how good Cotto is at middleweight. And Daniel Gill, we know, is solid. So I'm not ruling out an upset there. Obviously, Floyd's beaten Cotto before, so we'll be confident of a win again. Obviously, Floyd also knows that Cotto is a very big name, a pay-per-view star in his own right, and is going to bring a lot of attention and fans to the equation again. So, I think when analysing who the next opponent's going to be, Floyd wants to bring a guy who is going to add to his legacy. He wants the guy who's going to bring fan support, interest, money. He wants a guy who's going to bring a sort of level of intrigue to the equation. And he wants a guy who's going to look good on his resume. Potentially, he wants somebody who could represent the next generation. You know, he's already got wins over the likes of Canelo. If he had a win over, say, Keith Thurman, potentially, you know, the next 5-6 years, if the sport is dominated by a Canelo or a Danny Garcia or a Keith Thurman, you could say, yeah, but, you know, this guy's good, but look how he got schooled by Floyd. I'll start with the fight I'd most like to see. The fight I'd most like to see is Amir Khan. I think Amir Khan causes Floyd the most problems. I think Amir Khan represents a different challenge. I think unlike, you know, similar to Pacquiao in the speed stakes, however dissimilar in the fact that he's a much rangier individual who potentially wouldn't be big man by Floyd in the same way that Pacquiao was, who could potentially trade with Floyd on the outside, who could potentially throw more combinations than Manny Pacquiao did. And I think Khan, at present, he's a lot younger than Floyd, a lot younger than Manny. He's in the peak of his career, and he's looking really good. I also think he's improved for the move up to 147. I actually think stylistically, Khan Mayweather is the best fight, and that's the fight I'd probably be most interested in seeing. Who do I think it will be? I don't think it will be Khan. I think if Mayweather wanted to have fought Khan, he would have fought him already. I also think that Mayweather is going to set himself from fighting in September, and Khan may be excluded due to Ramadan commitments. I also don't think it will be Kell Brook. I actually thought that was quite a realistic fight a week ago, but with Floyd Mayweather vacating the belts, it suggests that he's less worried about unifying a division. You know, if he was going to fight Kell Brook, surely he wouldn't bother vacating those belts. Surely he'd want all four to be on the line and it to be billed as a big unification. So Khan and Brook, whilst they're realistic possibilities based on who they are, I actually don't think it's going to play out that those guys will be the next opponent. Danny Garcia, it's possible. It's possible. Whether Floyd will want to fight someone coming from a lower division on the back of a poor performance is questionable. You know, would fans genuinely believe that that was a fight Garcia would win? Questionable. So for me, there are two names left. Now the dark horse is Keith Thurman. I think that's a realistic possibility. Keith Thurman is extremely saleable. You know, he really is. He doesn't have a fight at the minute. He's coming off the back of a very impressive win off Robert Guerrero. He's charismatic. He's an extremely exciting, attractive fighter to watch. The public will like him. Yeah, if you think of a highlight montage of Keith Thurman, that's a saleable montage as someone who could be the next generation. It's also a passing of the torch moment. If Floyd thinks Thurman could dominate the division, you know, 147, 154 for the next 5-6 years, it's going to be very good for Floyd's legacy to beat him. Very good. You know, as I say, every time Thurman steps in the ring for the next 10 years maybe, Floyd's name will be mentioned as the guy who beat him. I also think, most importantly, we must remember that Floyd is signed with Showtime. Now, they're going to be interested in, you know, they've got one fight left with Floyd. They've got an interest in maximising their future revenue, and perhaps having Keith Thurman in there with Floyd gives them a chance to build and promote Keith Thurman for the future. You know, raise his profile and create the next star. You know, the next star that they can get rich off, if you like, for 10 years to come. So I think Keith Thurman's a realistic possibility. But for me, the person I think is most likely is Miguel Cotto. And that's a fight I don't like. I think Floyd wins easily on points. Why is it the most likely option? Firstly, legacy. You know, Floyd's won loads of belts in loads of divisions. But to win at middleweight would be another string to his bow. Secondly, I think Floyd would fancy the fight. You know, he's beaten him before. I think he's got Cotto worked out and he wouldn't worry about beating him again. Thirdly, and perhaps, you know, in terms of looking at why this fight is most likely to happen, Miguel Cotto's bizarre inactivity, bizarre turning down the money from Canelo, you know, no interest in fighting GGG, a weird fight with Daniel Gill. You know, it all makes sense that perhaps this is something that's already been discussed behind the scenes. We'd heard rumours leaked of was it a 40 million or 50 million offer to Miguel Cotto, and potentially it would all come together if Floyd had said, you know, don't fight Canelo, don't fight GGG, have a weak defence to keep your belt and fight me in your last fight. Potentially it all ties in as to why Miguel Cotto has behaved like he has and why he's been inactive. Could that be his last fight? Will Floyd want to retire as a champ of a new division, the biggest division? Does he want another big pay-per-view name in Miguel Cotto? I think that's very possible. Let me know your thoughts. Who do you think Floyd will fight in his 49th fight? Will it be his last fight? And who do you want to see? Thanks for watching.